and he saw monsters and ghosts, knives and blood, fists rapid fire into his anus, evil grins, laughter, images whirling about, screaming at him, jumping at him. "LeVar!" Brent screamed. "I'm going mad! LeVar! Is that you? Is this real? Am I here at your house, or am I at the studio? LeVar! What's real, and what isn't, LeVar?" Brent broke down and wailed, releasing all the shame, all the resentment, all the hatred he felt for Laurie. He raced for LeVar's kitchen, looked for a knife, scraped his hands through LeVar's kitchen drawer. Hands trembled, fingers scurried, trying to find a knife of the right size, but he shook so much when he reached for knives, he dropped them. His hand shook so violently. Suddenly, Brent felt strong arms about him that clutched both his arms and held them back. "No, Brent, you're not going to do this. Brent, this is real. I am LeVar, and I will protect you from Laurie. Stop it, Brent! Stop it!" "I can't tell Gail, LeVar. Don't tell Gail. Laurie will kill her. Laurie will kill her." All right, Brent, I promise. I won't tell Gail. Calm down. Calm down." Brent wailed in LeVar's arms. "Not as long as Laurie still roams about the studio." Brent's voice had become husky from hours and hours of wailing. LeVar was horrified how his best friend had been transformed from a well-adjusted, happy, and loving friend into a man who looked ready for the state mental hospital. "Laurie stuffs her purse with knives. The guards guard her. The guards caught her with knives. She said she was a chef. That's why she had to carry them, so they let her through." Brent scowled. "Laurie's so crazy. I really think if I tell Gail, she'll stalk Gail next." LeVar noticed that his best friend turned ashen white. "All right, Brent. I swear over my dead body, I won't tell Gail." Brent stared at LeVar in disbelief. "Over your dead body, you won't tell Gail?" "Over my dead body." He cuddled Brent from behind. LeVar wanted to get past this and focus on a solution. Though he felt Gail could help Brent now, he could see that to bring Gail into the picture could bring in complications that would destroy Brent. "Can't you beat these mind control drugs? They're tricky. You feel as if you're still yourself and feel fully conscious, but don't realize you're drugged. Even though I feel ill from them when I'm on them, I don't think I'm delirious. It's sort of like having a dream. But you don't know that you're dreaming, so everything makes sense at the time. Can't you see the drugs or get rid of them in your system? Maybe make yourself throw up whenever you feel ill because they make you feel ill. Have you tried that?" "Even though they made me sick to my stomach, I didn't throw up the first time. But I started to realize that whenever I feel sick, it's Laurie's brain control drugs, so I made myself throw up after that." "What do the drugs look like? Did you see them in your vomit?" "They are clear and colorless, almost like water. That's why it's easy to sneak them into food and drink." "How'd you figure this out?" "Well, when the drug mixes with air, it slowly turns silver and then black. 'Cause that's what happens to my vomit when I'm under Laurie's brain control drugs." LeVar tried to comfort and protect Brent, but it was no use, and every time they tried to thwart her, she would just find another way to get him. Brent finally summoned up the courage to tell Paramount about being raped. "Laurie has already talked to us about this matter. You raped her, and we won't ban her from the studio. We expect you to behave honorably around her, or else—" "She spiked my drink. She's tried to kill me." The studio executive looked over Brent with a scowl, as if he disdained the very presence of the star who made his show shine. "I see. Laurie owns the studio." Brent could not hold back the tears. "You think I enjoy sex that does this?" Brent revealed his rear, filled with stitches and raw and oozing flesh. The executive winced at the sight. "My, you really like it rough, don't you? I won't hear of this any more. How could such a beautiful woman do this to you? Brain control drugs! Get out of here." The executive scowled. "You're a disgrace to the studio. Treat Laurie with the respect she deserves." "You just couldn't resist her body, could you? Her beauty just overwhelmed you with lust. If you don't give her the respect she deserves, we'll write Data out of the show. will explain to the public that we can't have a rapist working for Paramount Studios." The executive paused and looked out the window. "One more thing. Not a word of this to anyone, you understand?" He stared Brent down as if in a dare. "If we find you have leaked this to anyone, we'll paint you as a rapist to the media. Don't forget, we have photographic evidence." How Brent loved Gail, and how this tore at his heart. He recalled Laurie's words, "You tell Gail about our sex and I'll kill her." Brent realized that if he lost his job as data, that he'd be out on the streets and unable to protect Gail. "Yes, sir." The executives then produced a contract that made him promise in writing that he would not tell anyone about the rape, or else they'd be entitled to smear him to the press as a rapist. If Brent refused to sign this contract, he'd lose his job. His heart racked with pain, sinking so low. He wasn't sure he could ever feel happy again. Now, if Gail wanted to, he could never marry her, at least not any time soon. Even worse, he felt he betrayed all that made him feel worthy as a man. He could barely restrain his tears, but if he ended up in jail, either as a rapist or because of his debts, how could he keep Gail as his pen friend or even protect her if he needed to in the future? Also, his co-stars made his job at Paramount a great place to work, and he had really bonded with them, so he decided to stay with Paramount for them, for his job as data, and so that he could stay off the streets to stay afloat for Gail. He had just finished paying off a huge debt, and was finally no longer in danger from his creditors. If he lost his job, he knew he'd be on the streets, and possibly in debtor's prison. He wasn't nearly as rich as the press made him out to be. The world did not know of the huge debt he had incurred before he landed his famous job as Data of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So Brent signed the Paramount contract, promising not to tell anyone about the rape, giving Paramount permission to smear him to the press if he did. Perhaps he could weasel out of this contract later, he thought. The contract also made him promise not to bring charges against Paramount for defamation. That is, if he violated this contract and thus forced them to go to the press and expose him as a rapist. In other words, he must not tell anyone about the September 1992 rape or about this contract he made with Paramount, or he'd lose his job and would have to pay back Paramount any earnings he made after he signed this contract with them. Brent never violated his contract until after it became invalid in 1999, because it had an illegal purpose to protect a criminal, Laurie. Once he invalidated the contract, Laurie continued to intimidate Brent into silence about her crimes by threatening to kill Gail if he dared to communicate with Gail. Though he brought criminal charges against Laurie in 1998, the Jesuits always got her out of jail on technicalities. Therefore, Gail never knew the full details of his rape with Laurie until 2012. Brent also needed the money from his Paramount job, and he actually loved the job, because he loved his co-stars and his role as Data. So despite Laurie, Brent strived to have a good relationship with Paramount, who, after 1999, actually seemed embarrassed about Laurie. The Jesuits made sure Brent never had enough money to survive without his Paramount earnings, forcing him to remain dependent on Paramount for financial survival. It wasn't the fault of his co-stars that the higher-ups at Paramount were Jesuits. The Jesuits made sure that despite Brent's genius intelligence, he had a pitiful career after Star Trek: The Next Generation finished its television run in 1994. He landed no other roles in Hollywood that made him as famous as Data. Now, in September 1992, he learned the truth, that Paramount Studios sponsored Laurie McBride and encouraged her to rape him, allowing her in the studio even when she had knives, claiming to believe her story that she was a cook. So he came back to the studio later to tell LeVar about his meeting with the executives, and he ran right back into Laurie McBride. She now knew he had signed the contract and felt herself invincible.